Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Let me just first thank to Sharon for the presentations, and let me make sure that I'm coming across clearly. So if the admin can just put a thumb up if my sound is clear, then I will know to proceed. Okay, I assume it's fine. Okay, well, look, thank you to the organizers. I think Sharon's presentation it's good to be with you this afternoon. I have just a short time, so I have just a few points to make. Look, I think the ISEAS annual survey has become a great international public service. It's almost a public good to know sentiments, views across the region. We had this, of course, the survey was launched a number of times, including earlier this year when it came out, and I was a discussant earlier. And as Sharon noted, it came out just before the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So, you know, we have a lot of, we use the term game changer with some exaggeration and too frequently, but I think the Russian aggression against Ukraine is a real game changer. So the survey itself, it would be interesting to do it again and to do different kinds of questions. Certainly the Russian war in Ukraine, this is a game changer and has far-reaching ramifications for all the questions and responses and so on. However, I think we can look at it two ways. First, change, and then maybe to look at what has changed from the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So, look, I think what hasn't really changed this survey, you know, over the past several years is a China survey. I mean, it has many questions about the EU, Japan, US, and ASEAN, and so on. But the trend and the pattern is very clear that China dominates as the most important economic growth locomotive in the region. Is the linchpin for the economies of East Asia and beyond. However, the trend has been that on the security front, while China is dominant as an economic partner, China is the biggest worry when it comes to security dilemmas in the region. So I think this pattern has not changed with the Russian invasion of Ukraine. In fact, if anything, has been reinforced. I think the geopolitical tension, rivalry, I think that we've seen has been exacerbated by this war in Europe now. What has changed? I think, you know, the ASEAN responses to the Russian invasion of Ukraine has further it was divided over the South China Sea going back a decade ago, and then along the way, divided between the US and China rivalry competitions, the Myanmar military coup and crisis. Director of ISEAS mentioned this as another division, and ASEAN has been unable to, has not made much progress. And basically, ASEAN now, as we know it, has come to an end. It's not an end of ASEAN, but ASEAN does not comprise 10 countries, 10 member states anymore. It's only ASEAN 9. So I think that's a very first reality that we have to come to grips with. As long as the Myanmar coup and civil war persist, we'll have ASEAN 9. And ASEAN 9 means a lot of things and have many consequences and meanings for us. So Myanmar military coup, crisis, civil war, ASEAN divided, mainly Singapore, Philippines, Indonesia, and Malaysia on one side, the rest of ASEAN on the other side, basically turn a blind eye. The Russian invasion is the latest fault line. As we can see, Laos and Vietnam abstained from the UNGA resolution to condemn Russia for aggression against Ukraine, and the other countries sign up for to support the resolution, including Cambodia, the ASEAN chair this year. which co-sponsored the resolution. And then there were several other votes along the way on Russia, including UN Human Rights Council to expel Russia and so on. So we see ASEAN divisions all over the place now. So, with these divisions, we see outliers on different issues. So as Sharon delineated, Cambodia is very much all in on China. Vietnam is very interesting because it's an outlier in a different way. It is very supportive, certainly taking a more lenient approach towards Russia, not supportive of the war, but abstain from condemning it. And then at the same time, interesting that Vietnam has a lot of contentious issues with China, but on Russia, it is accommodating. And then you have, the Philippines and Vietnam vis-a-vis China, South China Sea. I mentioned earlier about the Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, and Indonesia on the return to democratic process in Myanmar. So you have outliers on different issues based on these fault lines, based on these divisions, including the latest in the Russian war in Ukraine. And these divisions, they tell us something. And it'll be very interesting to see what the next ISEAS survey comes up with early next year, because I think this year much will change, a lot on the ground this year. So by the time we do the survey again next year, I think the survey probably would want to try to even broaden the respondents pool, the sampling pool, and with more questions and so on. But what we'll be seeing, I think, with the ASEAN divisions over different fault lines is that ASEAN centrality is challenged on the one hand. On the other hand, on the flip side, the major powers, the great powers now stampeding or stomping around the region, dividing up the regions even more. And now you see not just the US and China, but Russia and China, and the US and EU. So the trend that we saw prior to this survey, the latest survey, has been reinforced and exacerbated. So we're seeing not less, not the same, but greater, great powers rivalry and competition, not just US and China now, but also Russia in the mix and the EU in the mix. Now, that has consequences because the EU, for the next survey, the EU is very much lined up against the Russian invasion. We don't know how this war will go. It has some, I think, some weeks and months ahead. I don't know how long it will be. It will take to reach a political settlement between Russia and Ukraine and so on. But the EU all in to fight against the Russian aggression, and then the NATO countries as well. So when we do this next survey, it'll be very interesting how the ASEAN perceptions of among the strategic thinkers and analysts about the EU, US on the one hand, and NATO as well, and China and Russia on the other hand. Now, as a last point, I don't want to exceed the time, but there's always a question about what Japan should do. And Japan has been at the forefront very much with the Western alliance in condemning Russia. And I think this is, we can see the overwhelming United Nations General Assembly vote to condemn Russia. So there's nothing surprising there. But Japan also has imposed sanctions against Russia, Russian interests, individuals, similar to what Singapore has done. The rest of ASEAN are very limited. So for Japan, I think now it's a different space for Japan. I think this Russian war in Ukraine is a game changer and a window for Japan to become more autonomous in the region. The US is now engaged in a three-ocean confrontation, rivalry and competition. So the Indo-Pacific vis-a-vis China, but now the US is back in the Atlantic Alliance firmly against Russia and Ukraine, with the EU and NATO. So I think in Asia now, there's a gap to be made up. There's a gap to bridge, and there's a role to be played by different set of countries, different constellations, and this should be led by Japan. This is a window for a third way, not U.S. Western alliance based, not certainly China based, but a third way alternative, possibly led by Japan together with, to an extent, Australia, but certainly South Korea, to an extent, India, and certainly the ASEAN countries. So, if Japan were to spend more on defense, we see Germany increasing to 2% of GDP. This is a time if Japan became more assertive and spending more on defense. No one can blame Japan for doing that, given the Russian aggression that we're seeing. And also, if Japan were to provide more regional leadership outside the U.S.-China frame, outside the EU-Russian frame, this, I think, would be very much welcome by the ASEAN countries. So this is a rare window, a time where Japan can exert more autonomy, more leadership in the region. It will be welcome because I think most countries do not want to fall into the one side, US or China or EU, NATO or Russia. We want to have an alternative as a counterbalance. On that note, I'll leave it there. Thank you very much. We'll have some more discussion. Thank you.